Leaders from 5 African nations are in Washington, D.C. this week for a 3-day mini-summit hosted by President Trump and his administration, aimed at strengthening commercial ties between the U.S. and Africa. President Trump said he wants to exchange trade for aid. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Chris Smith, senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, chairman of the Subcommittee on Africa, and co-chairman of the Congressional Executive Commission on China. He represents New Jersey's 4th Congressional District. Congressman Smith, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much. Great to see you again, Tony.
Thanks for joining us here in studio. Now, it may not be clear exactly from what President Trump's comments were, but the suggestion he wants to trade aid for trade or exchange trade for aid, I would think is a welcome sign to many of these African country leaders who have been these liberal policies out of the State Department have been imposed upon them.
There's so many nefarious promotions of abortion, LGBTQ by NGOs, many of them from the United States and the European Union and elsewhere, and they build up a local capacity among African countries with like-minded ultra-leftists, and it's a very, very dangerous situation for the morality as well as the health and well-being of people in these countries. Trade, I'm a big proponent of Power Africa to help them matriculate from a very dearth of capability to run machines, to run their hospitals. Power and the climate change folks have made that even harder for them to build up that capacity. So what we're saying is that a lot of countries want trade. They want to raise the middle class, which can happen. But so long as the NGOs and the vast industrial complex of NGOs, as our Secretary of State said in a recent statement, it carries with it a whole lot of baggage.
Isn't that something similar to what we've seen domestically, where, instead of empowering people like we saw in the last Trump administration, helping people to create jobs and opportunities, rather than keeping them dependent upon the government?
It's a great point. I do think we need to ensure that where there's refugees, like we're seeing in DR Congo, and certainly as a result of the fighting that's been going on there, we need to be first and foremost in providing humanitarian aid.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to the everyday, what are we doing vis-a-vis name the country in Africa or elsewhere, we should be saying, how do you develop that middle class and entrepreneurs and people that can create jobs?
Let me give you a prime example of this, something you've led on. I've mentioned it. We're going to talk about it later in the program, so I don't want to get too deep into it. But PEPFAR, that program started in 2003.
That's right.
It's been around for 25 years. And it's just grown. I think we're over $125 billion that has been. It was called an emergency plan.
That's right.
But it's still there.
No, when it was first proposed, Henry Hyde was the prime author of it. And of course, George W. Bush was, behind it completely. But the problem is that all of a sudden it went from abstinence and the big emphasis on being faithful as a way of mitigating
I
the
remember
pandemic.
those debates. I was here.
Now they're promoting philosophies that are antithetical to everything we believe in.
It's been traced to funding abortion.
That's right. No doubt about it. And Biden hijacked PEPFAR, put out guidance, as he called it, that said every recipient of funds need to change the laws in their country that they're operating on sexual and reproductive health and rights. That's abortion and the entirety of the LGBT
So is that not
agenda.
an example of what's happened with our foreign policy?
Yes, it has been hijacked by the leftists. We should have a humanitarian core, Rubio has talked about the America First project, and that's where the funding from USAID will now go over to. And we got to make sure that it's really focused on humanitarianism and building people.
And it addresses emergency. It doesn't become a perpetual government program like PEPFAR.
Well, PEPFAR got up to about 6.7 to 7 billion. I asked the head of it, John Nagunnasone, who ran it for the Biden administration, and I have to tell you, he's a deputy. He's he's still in the mix in this administration in running this. I met with him, with my wife Marie, for 2 hours. Asked him, what are they doing on abortion? What are they doing on all these issues like the LGBTQ? He said, I don't know. I'm at 10,000 feet. I don't know what's going on the ground. I have asked repeatedly to say, what are they doing with taxpayer monies? And we get crickets.
So the Trump administration in the rescissions has cut not the treatment. They're leaving money in there to help those to still deal with those issues, but cutting out the NGOs that are promoting these woke ideologies of abortion. But the Senate wants to put it back in. Senate Republicans want to put it back in. Why?
I know. Well, Bush and Obama and Bono are pushing very hard for that, and I'm very disappointed in President Bush. I tried for 8 years to get him to include the pro-life Mexico City policy for this entire program, and they wouldn't do it. I said that, Planned Parenthood and their ilk make a beeline for this massive amount of money, then they integrate what is good, mother-to-child transmission drugs and the like, with abortion.
This is what is so good. I mean, the Trump administration is zeroing in on these issues.
Yes,
it's disruptive to the left, but he is zeroing in on it. And what's frustrating is you have same thing happened in the reconciliation bill, where the Senate allowed the funding for Planned Parenthood, the reduction that was there for 10 years. They reduced it to 1 year. They took out the prohibition against funding transgenderism, transgender procedures. I'm not sure what's happening over there among Republicans in the Senate, but folks, I'm going to give you some homework later. We're going to talk about this when Ariel joins us about what you could do. Before we run out of time, Chris, we've got about 4 minutes left. You and I were on the Hill earlier this week speaking at a forum for China Aid, Bob Fu, regarding religious and human rights persecution in China. You spoke, I spoke. But there was a prime example of what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. I had just left. I think you had just left. But a man connected to the Chinese Communist Party was there and started an altercation. With
Bob Fu's wife. Got too close, and that's something that they do very well. They put a camera right into your face. It's a provocateur is what this man was all about. And we got to realize, this kind of thing happens in all of our districts as well. They shout horrible things at you, get real close. That's not the Chinese, that's the leftists. But it's the same tactic, trying to provoke you to push you away. Then they claim that you have committed some
And this is about intimidation.
That's right.
Bob Fu, who's actually senior fellow here at the Family Research Council as well.
And an amazing man.
He really is. His home in Texas, targeted for 3 months a few years back. The Chinese Communist Party, they're trying to infiltrate our government at every level. They're stealing trade secrets. They're part of, we talked about this in the program this week, is the Department of Agriculture announcing that we're going to block China from buying agricultural land, especially those near military installations. But there is an effort to intimidate Chinese Americans and silence them from speaking out about the abuses of the Chinese Communist Party.
And it has a term, transnational repression. They're all over this country targeting the diaspora, especially the human rights activists. One of the ladies who works on the Hong Kong issue, Frances, she's got $1 million bounty on her head from Xi Jinping. And she's an amazingly, heroic individual. She was there speaking out boldly. We've got to get the FBI, we've got to get our country to do far more to end this repression, where the long arm of Xi Jinping and his dictatorship ceases to intimidate or try to intimidate.
Yeah, I know when I was on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, I was sanctioned by China. So good. So I guess you and I both can't go into Walmart because that's pretty much everything from China is in Walmart. I know. But that's their role, to intimidate, is to say if you challenge them on their their human rights abuses. My focus, obviously, on the religious freedom issue, which is getting worse in China. China is not getting better.
No, by the day.
And American corporations, in many ways, have been facilitating this.
They have enabled like no one else. Going back to Bill Clinton, when he delinked human rights from trade on May 26, 1994, and I have a op-ed that I wrote that's sitting on my website. I couldn't believe how he pandered, and that goes for his wife as well when she was Secretary of State, to enable these atrocities that are happening each and every day.
Right.
And they don't raise human rights, but they do it in a very, very quiet way.
In fairness, Republican administrations have not been aggressive in addressing this issue either.
I agree.
Because of the large economic opportunity in China and the cheap goods that come from China. Trump's one of the first that's been willing to upset the apple cart on it.
And, we saw it during the Olympics. I had a hearing. We asked Coca-Cola and others, and they wouldn't say a thing about the genocide that the Chinese Communist Party was committing against the Uyghurs. A genocide in real time, and we might lose some market share.
Well, I tell you, we're just about out of time here, Chris, but Americans, Christians, those that are concerned about this, can take action themselves by looking at the products they buy and making sure they're not from China. I mean, that's what I do. It's hard. It's hard. When I shop on Amazon, I got to look very closely, and oftentimes they'll try to hide it. But we should use our dollars to speak for those who cannot speak, and that includes product from China. Chris Smith, always great to see you.
Thanks
for
your
being
great
here.
Work.
Thank you.